What is the most important video game ever made? There's been so many games over the more than 50 years of video games existing as a medium that could easily earn this title. But I think if we take a look at modern gaming, we can see a major genre trend for the games industry over the last decade or so. FPS games are one of the reigning dominant forces within the modern video game scene. In terms of FPS games, I would argue that Doom was the single most important game for this genre. Now, I'm not saying that Doom was the most important game ever made, but I will argue it as one of the most important games ever made. But the creation of Doom was a long and complicated one, filled with a lot of struggles, and a lot of names that would become staples within the video game development scene. Let's take a quick look back at how this storied and very important franchise began its development. Before we get started real quick, be sure to subscribe here at the Glowsider channel, and let me know in the comments what game history tidbits you'd want me to tackle next. Alright, let's dive into the early era of DOS PCs. Let me start by taking you to the southeast of the US, all the way to Shreveport, Louisiana, during the early 1990s. Here, we find a small software company, specializing in magazine discs, named SoftDisk. The company had found success making software for these magazines, and in 1990 would listen to one of their employees and start offering a subscription-based game disc titled Gamer's Edge. This project was pitched by none other than John Romero, and would also be worked on by rising stars John and Adrian Carmack, which, funnily enough, no relation, alongside Romero. They were soon joined by Tom Hall, known as a programmer in the Apple II department, during the night to also assist on programming and game design. Finally, the team recruited Lane Roth to be the editor on their projects. Unsurprisingly, in hindsight, this all-star team would find some pretty good success with the titles they created. Dangerous Dave, Catacombs 3D, Rescue Rover, and Hover Tank 3D were just a few. John Carmack, in particular, was known for creating revolutionary techniques that helped push the PC gaming scene forward. In September of 1990, he would go on to create one of the most revolutionary pieces of PC gaming software for the time, a playable PC demo of Super Mario Bros. 3. Smooth scrolling graphics seemed impossible due to the hardware limitations of most readily available PCs. This really was a revolutionary demo, and helped showcase the potential of what PCs could do in the future with smart software usage. The team was so ecstatic by this demo, they even sent it over to Nintendo, who, likewise, was extremely impressed, as this seemed like a pure impossibility during the time. However, they did let them know that they would not be interested in the title, as they had no need or want to publish their games on PC, as it would kind of understandably interfere with their console business. They would then quickly tell the team that they were not allowed to use the Mario Bros. License. It wouldn't be long before this team would dream of separating from SoftDisk, and after being approached by Apogee Software, they pitched a variety of projects that would eventually morph into the original Commander Keen, utilizing the tricks they learned from the Super Mario Bros. 3 demo. The game would take advantage of a shareware distribution model, where a free demo would be distributed through various floppy disks and, well, other ways of distribution during the early 90s. You could then call in and place an order for the actual full game. This model would prove to be somewhat successful, and with the profits made from this first title, John and Adrian Carmack, alongside John Romero, would go on to found id Software on February 1st, 1991, and would bring on Tom Hall as well. Kevin Cloud and Jay Wilbur would be the next members to join the id Software team before their next project, and this would be a big one. John Carmack had an interest in the growing 3D graphics scene. It seemed inevitable that this style would eventually be used for video games, and Carmack, already proving that he was one of the best in the industry, decided to experiment with this medium. PCs at the time really did struggle with 3D games, only truly being able to display simple wireframe graphics or basic flight games. A fast action game was going to need a lot of innovation to run well. But with the accelerating advancements in hardware on PC, Carmack felt like it would be possible. He would create a 3D title with walls placed on a flat grid and utilizing a unique style of ray casting graphics. This resulted in an engine that could display 2D sprites for enemies with 3D ray-casted walls after only 6 weeks of development. It was a simple, rudimentary 3D engine and was quickly used in Hover Tank 3D. As after leaving on not great terms with Softdisk for utilizing their PCs to create Commander Keen on and off of company time, even going so far as to take the company's PCs home to continue work on the title, they were required to make a few more games for the company before being free of them completely. Carmack continued to work on this engine and took inspiration from a game titled Ultima Underworld, with its texture-mapped 3D graphics. Carmack implemented this within 6 weeks without sacrificing engine speed or greatly increasing the system requirements, unlike Ultima Underworld. This engine was quickly implemented into another Softdisk title, Catacomb 3D. And after seeing it, Scott Miller, one of the team's partners at Apogee, encouraged the team to take this engine and develop a 3D action game. By now, it was November of 1992, and the second trilogy of Commander Keen episodes had recently wrapped up development. The team had also begun to escape their contractual obligations to Softdisk. While ideas were floated around for a third trilogy of Commander Keen games, the team really wanted to move away from these simple, kid-friendly titles and art styles. It was abundantly clear that John Carmack had far more interest developing new, unique 3D engines than 2D ones. While a sci-fi 3D project was initially pitched by Tom Hall, the team would instead go with an idea proposed by John Romero. Why not create a 3D remake of the Apple II title, Castle Wolfenstein? The team had all played the title and had fond memories of it, so it honestly was something everybody was interested in. Romero continued to pitch the project as a fast-paced, loud action game. He felt that if the game were slower and more methodical, audiences would become confused and bored with the novelty that 3D games and their controls would present at the time. Something quick and fast-paced with a very understandable barrier for entry made the most sense for where the medium was at the time. The actual Wolfenstein name, though, was something that the team weren't sure that they would be able to use. After tracking down the original developer, Silas Warner, they discovered that the publisher and original copyright owner, Muse Software, shut down in 1986, and the rights to the name currently lie with a resident of Michigan. After a $5,000 payment, id Software owned the rights to the Wolfenstein name, and began work on Wolfenstein 3D. The game was immediately approved at Apogee, as the team had proven to be one of the company's rising star developers, and was given a $100,000 budget. The team was also able to secure a retail presence for the title, despite its graphic content alongside the shareware model, setting the title up for major success. Romero would go on to pitch the world and gameplay ideas for the title, while Hall designed the levels and collectibles. John Carmack would be working on the game engine over the course of a month, and during that time, added wall objects, doors, as well as overhauling the engine to run faster and play smoother. Programmed in ANSI C with some parts written in assembly, the game would support a higher 256 VGA color output as well. While Romero would pitch ideas to streamline and speed up gameplay, he would also join Hall on level design, taking inspiration from Pac-Man, even including an Easter egg level referencing the title. Adrian Carmack would work on the different sprites and animations for the game, while Bobby Prince would utilize his experience in the military for sound design. All the voice acting for the title was done by the development team, basing some of them off that original Wolfenstein title. Kevin Cloud would be brought on to assist with art, and the team would move closer to Apogee in Mesquite, Texas, where they would renegotiate a higher royalty rate of 50%, which Apogee was happy to give. The team also planned out the additional level packs during this time, utilizing a custom-made program called Tile Editor. This sped up the creation of additional levels tremendously, and made the extra level packs an easier workload. During this time, Foregone, the distributor of many of Apogee's retail titles, as well as Wolfenstein 3D, reached out to the team expressing concern of the game's violent content. In response, The team doubled down and made the game more violent, adding skeletons, bloody walls, and German screams when killing enemies. It fit id Devil May Care attitude at the time, and really pushed the tone of id Software games going forward. The game would release its first episode of the shareware release the morning of May 5th, 1992, with the other episodes being completed only a few weeks later. In half a year, the team had spent around $37,000 to make the title, and had managed to, in a short amount of time and on a small budget, make an absolute smash success. With initial hopes for a royalty check of about $60,000, the team's first check instead came in at $100,000, selling around 4,000 copies a month through mail order alone. While Commander Keen was a success for Apogee, Wolfenstein 3D was bringing in nearly 20 times the profit of the series every month. The game became a staple on many PCs and would win a multitude of awards. A title from a new small developer had managed to completely rock the gaming world. Wolfenstein 3D was a huge hit for id Software. Its success in the PC space was honestly somewhat shocking for the era. I don't think a lot of people were expecting PC games to take off like this, much less a 3D FPS title. But it was an expertly crafted title for the time, and John Carmack's insane contributions to the game engine helped it stand out as a technical marvel in a crowded PC space that, while having some success, never reached that same level that the consoles did. While the success of Wolfenstein 3D inevitably spawned a sequel titled Spear of Destiny, the team knew that their next major title needed to massively innovate on what Wolfenstein 3D introduced. While the game was extremely impressive for the time, it was clear the genre could be iterated on further. While the rest of the id team worked on Spear of Destiny, the engine for the sequel didn't really need much work put into it. As such, this freed up Carmack to continue innovating on a new 3D engine to potentially be used in a new project. In 1992, after Spear of Destiny wrapped up production, the team at id began to contemplate what their next move would be. Thanks to the time Carmack was able to spend on his engine, it was very apparent that once again, they should go the 3D game development route, as that was what Carmack had an interest in developing. While Hall would pitch a return to the Commander Keen series, the team didn't feel like it would be a good fit for this engine, and they were far more interested in creating an even more dark, action-oriented world. John Carmack would actually be the first to pitch what would inevitably become this new project. The team had recently completed a Dungeons & Dragons campaign based around the utilization of technology to combat demons. Ideas were initially thrown around to attempt to get the Alien license and create a title based on that. However, this was pretty quickly dropped because, well, the team wanted to actually own the game they made. Still, they would utilize a lot of the design principles and themes from Aliens, but combine it with something like Evil Dead 2. The original working title for this project was Green and Pissed. But, I mean, come on, it was pretty clear this wasn't gonna stick. The team clearly drew a lot of inspiration from different forms of pop culture media at the time, with films being a particular interest of the group. It would be John Carmack who would suggest a title change based off a now infamous line.
What you got in there? In here? Doom.
One of the most influential titles for any piece of media ever made came from a 1986 sports drama called The Color of Money. Every aspect of Doom would be seeping with media inspirations, fueled entirely by the counterculture of the early 90s. But this now iconic style was still in its infancy. The team hadn't truly nailed exactly what Doom even was meant to be, other than a fast-paced, first-person shooter where you fought demons. In November of 1992, production officially began on this new Doom project. The team would be comprised of John Carmack, John Romero, Adrian Carmack, Kevin Cloud, and Tom Hall. This small team would move the production into their own office, titled Suite 666, located right next to a dental practice. This was great for them, as they used the sounds of dental agony as inspiration with, I'm sure, no long-standing mental repercussions. There was also another issue the team wanted to make changes on with this project: publishing. While Apogee had been a beneficial publisher for the team, it just made sense for them to work on self-publishing their titles, as they now had the financial capital to do so, and would result in much more financial gain. With the team, location, and publishing set, Tom Hall began work on the design document for the title, the Doom Bible. This Bible gave way to a sci-fi horror story set on the moon, where due to the hubris of humanity, a portal would be opened, allowing demons to spill into our world. The player would initially be led to believe the invaders were aliens, and over the course of the story, would instead discover them to be demons, and hell would slowly take over the levels as you progress further through the game. John Carmack, however, was not a big fan of this proposed story, and insisted that it was completely unnecessary to have a story at all, giving way to his famous "stories in video games" quote. Anyways, the team agreed with Carmack that instead of a focus on story, they should instead focus on new technological innovations, and making sure the transitions between levels was quicker and snappier than Wolfenstein, while not being bogged down by a plot. Carmack's big innovation that he wanted was for a continuous world instead of levels, and while Hall didn't particularly like the idea, he created a new version of the Bible with this in mind. It quickly became apparent, however, that the continuous world idea wouldn't be possible on current hardware. So Hall, once again, reworked the design documents for the title. The story that Hall outlined did make its way into various bits of pre-release material. Its 1993 press release included teases of the story, while touting John Carmack's new innovative 3D engine. It also mentioned the exciting new multiplayer for the title, which at this point hadn't even begun the design phase. Not sure if you could view that as confidence or insanity, but considering how good it turned out, let's just say it was confidence. During some pre-alpha builds of the game, there was even an introductory level still included that fit with Hall's original story. Alongside this, there were other ideas being played around with during these alphas, like an additional shield, an inventory, completely different UI, and even lives and scoring from Wolfenstein. All these systems were eventually cut from the game, as they were just muddying the experience unnecessarily, and were keeping from the fast, snappy design the game was going for. As a result of these mechanics, pretty much the entirety of the Doom Bible was scrapped, as the realistic, character-driven plot wasn't really meshing with the gameplay and style the team wanted for the title. While Hall also initially created some level designs, Romero and Carmack turned these levels down, due to feeling too militaristic and similar to Wolfenstein. Romero would instead create some of his own levels that, while somewhat more abstract, the team thought of as a huge improvement for the title. After pretty much all of Hall's work had been scrapped, it left the title's lead designer feeling like he wasn't having much of an impact on the game's design. Hall also began to clash more with Carmack over various gameplay improvements, and felt the current environment was becoming harder and harder to work in. While, as a result of this, Hall spent less time on the project. The other members of the team felt his vision was not matching up with their set goals for the game. As a result, Hall was fired from the project, and would return to Apogee to work. Sandy Peterson would be brought in as his replacement just 10 weeks before the game shipped in September, as a new designer for the title. David Taylor would also be added to the team as a third programmer as well. Peterson and Romero would become the leads for the level design on the project, with both creating some of the most iconic and well-beloved FPS levels of all time, setting the groundwork for future FPS games to follow. Both designers' strengths were crucial to the flow of the game being as great as it turned out, and the team was happy with their work. Another major thing to tackle with this title was its multiplayer. This was promised in that original press release, and the team fully intended to deliver. Now, with it being announced with the game, you would expect that the team had been working on this aspect of the project throughout the entire development. Nah. Instead, Carmack began adding multiplayer 1 month before the game shipped. Carmack managed to get multiplayer coded pretty quickly, and through the design team's testing of the 4-player mode, The team coined the terms deathmatch and fragging. With a heavy dose of inspiration from fighting games, the multiplayer component would be completed just in time for the game's release. While this was a huge innovation brought on by Carmack, his engine would be the true revolutionary highlight. Programmed in the C language with some assembly, this engine was built with the early modding scene in mind. See, with Wolfenstein 3D, a mod scene had developed despite the title not having many tools built in for it. Carmack wanted to support mods in a much more in-depth way with Doom. The idea was to create a map editor with easily swappable files, leading to the creation of the iconic WADs. Short for Where's All the Data, WAD files would result in Doom having one of, if not the largest modding scene in the games industry. Doom was built to support much more advanced level geometry than Wolfenstein, with walls and floors at any height, and a lighting system that could directly change the assigned color palette on surfaces, modifying a texture's color palette to simulate darkness and distance. Romero would find ways to add different strobing lights, switches, platforms, and movable stairs. After Romero pushed the engine to its limits, Carmack would integrate binary space partitioning to help with performance. This would reduce portions of a level based on what the player was viewing. While testing the game and engine, Taylor, one of the programs on the title mentioned earlier, added various cheat codes to make testing easier. Instead of removing them, they were left in the game for players to discover and use for themselves. Doom's art direction would be headed by Adrian Carmack, with Kevin Cloud on the team as an additional artist. The goal was for a nightmarish, realistic, and darker approach to both monster and level design. Clay models of various enemies were created, and photos were digitized into 2D sprites for the title, with a program John Carmack wrote himself. For the models that weren't made from clay, latex and metal sculptures were created by one Gregor Punchatz. Weapons for the title were created using various toys and posing from Cloud and Adrian, as well as their own body and clothing for textures. Gregor Punchatz's father, Don Ivan Punchatz, would be the one to create the now iconic Doom box art, based only on descriptions of the game, with no actual in-depth concept references. Bobby Prince would be brought back from Wolfenstein to compose for this new title. While Prince wanted to utilize various pieces of ambient music, Romero wanted a more metal and techno-inspired soundtrack. Prince would deliver on this, but he would also deliver the ambient tracks as well, hoping the team would choose those instead. Both were used at various points, and with the music being made before the levels were completed, the tracks were placed at different points throughout the game by the development team. Prince would create sound effects based purely on descriptions or concept art, and would inevitably need to be altered when the team was able to properly finish the animations. Demon sound effects were taken from various animal sounds, and all the sounds in the game were built from the get-go to play through a variety of different MIDI systems. Throughout the game's development, release and distribution remained a huge question. This would be id Software's first self-published title, and could easily spell disaster for the company. Jay Wilbur, who had been hired on as id Software's CEO, took lead on distribution and marketing, deciding to focus heavily on the shareware distribution system, as id would make far more money on copies bought directly from them than if distributed at different retailers. Believing that mainstream press had no interest in the title, only one ad was bought in a gaming magazine, and retailers were given the option to sell the first episode of Doom at any price they liked, hoping it would lead audiences to buy directly from id more. With a budget of under $1 million, the team fully planned to release the game during the third quarter of 1993. However, this would soon slip back, as the team would need more time to finish the game and get it in a playable state. When the game's development reached December of 1993, the team was in the middle of a hardcore crunch period, with multiple members sleeping in the office exclusively. The singular press preview for the game was given out to Computer Gaming World, with high praise being given for the title in June. Continuous development updates were also being given out to audiences on the early internet, with those viewing these updates calling into id with both excitement and anger over the game's delays. Anticipation for the title was at an all-time high, and after a 30-hour testing session, at midnight on December 10th, 1993, id Software would release Doom to the world. Or at least, they would try to. When uploading the first episode to the FTP server at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, so many users were connected in anticipation of the game's release that the id team wasn't even able to connect. The network admin added more connections and kicked everyone off just to make room. After waiting 30 minutes for the upload, about 10,000 people all at once attempted to download the game, completely crashing the university's network. Keep in mind, this level of hype is on 1993 internet and was completely unmatched at the time. Only hours after the game's release, university networks would completely ban Doom multiplayer games, as their systems were being completely overwhelmed. John Carmack would quickly push out a patch for the title in an attempt to help with the network congestion, but Doom-specific rules would still need to be added by network admins. Doom was a gigantic hit, to put it lightly, and the game was making a profit on day one of release. Initial daily income started at around $100,000 a day, outselling in a single day what took Wolfenstein 1 month. The shareware version had been distributed over 1 million times by just May of 1994, and had sold around 65,000 full copies with around 140,000 reported by the end of the year. In late 1995, it was estimated that more copies of Doom had been installed on PCs than Windows 95. The game was also a critical darling, winning multiple Best of awards and various outlets claiming it to be the greatest PC game ever made. Doom became an immediate smash hit, revolutionizing the gaming space in multiple ways, design and technical-wise. Its single-player campaign changed the ways developers would think about designing FPS games, while its multiplayer completely revolutionized the online gaming space, accelerating the development of online titles in the gaming industry. Doom was such a big deal that FPS games weren't even a specific genre for the longest time. They were simply known as Doom clones. Doom was a far bigger success than anyone could have ever imagined, and while multiple mods and level packs would be created for the title, a sequel would quickly enter production, utilizing the same engine, with the focus primarily being on a new set of levels. Doom 2 would release to retailers not even a year after the original game, with it once again being a massive success, selling more than 1.2 million copies within the year. Doom and id Software are some of the most important and influential names in the gaming industry, and they would continue to innovate with their future releases. The names of the development team members are some of the most cherished and respected in the entire industry, and many continue to innovate in the games industry in the modern day. While many games can be seen as the greatest of all time, I don't believe many can claim the level of importance that Doom does. It helped found a genre, bring revolutions in game and technical design, and is still played by millions to this day. I think it's safe to say Doom is an extremely important game with an unmistakable legacy. And I believe many can agree that Doom is one of the greatest games of all time.